What's up, everybody? Metal Dave here, along with my co-host Jason McMaster, bringing you another episode of the Talk Louder podcast. Today, we are joined by John Perez from Solitude Aeturnus, Rotting Corpse, Liquid Sound Company, and man, he's just been a lifelong metalhead here in Texas. Started in the early to mid '80s, much like you, Jason. A lot of parallels between you and John. And he's a great guy, very knowledgeable. You can just tell he lives and breathes heavy metal, works at a record store and has for decades. So he's kind of that nerd guy that we really enjoy talking to because he's every bit the geek that we are when it comes to heavy metal and rock and roll.
Well, finding a way to inject your number one passion into your daily routine and pay your bills,
yeah,
is like to some people, like to some people's parents. I know it was crazy to my dad, to tell him that I'm not going to go to school anymore and I'm just going to have these disposable jobs so I can play rock and roll. And then eventually I ended up with jobs that I loved that were okay with me going on tour and coming back and clocking back in. It's like, how did that happen? And the jobs that I'm talking about are record stores, working at guitar stores, or now teaching music to young people. Well, people of all ages. And talk about John Perez is the epitome of that. I don't think today we got him to mention, I flipped burgers for a while and I delivered pizzas for a while and I did construction for a while, which would be in my book,
Yeah.
But I think that he's been kind of working in record stores and putting on shows and tour managing and doing whatever it took to record demos and to make records and to put gas in the van and he's really done well with very little other than his passion and talent.
Right. And he, as you mentioned, wears many hats. Most people probably know him as a performer, a musician on stage, but he did have a record label, Brain Ticket Records, for a while. He's tour managed Candlemass, St. Vitus, Goblin, some other bands as well. He's just one of those guys that got in his blood at an early age, and everything he does has to have some element of music associated with it. Whether it's, doing something for a hobby, doing something for enjoyment, or doing something to pay the bills, it's all got to be music related. And so he's kind of had his hands in a lot of cookie jars over the years, and makes for interesting conversation too. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I was excited to have him today for many reasons, just because we go way back and we talked about that, and he told some great stories about his teenage years in San Antonio, which I forget. I forget that he's actually from San Antonio and then moved to DFW area in the mid 80s. And anyway, it was great having him today, man. I think it's an awesome episode. We had him for like an hour and a half too, which is fantastic.
Yeah. He's one of those guys that we call a lifer.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And they just crushed it. I'll say it one more time, and we talk quite a bit about this throughout the episode. But Solitude Aeturnus, they just crushed it at Hell's Heroes. They just crushed it, and John gives us some insight as to his true feelings about how it went down and how he may have had a premonition about it as well.
Yeah, that was a great story. Great story. And so, I'm glad you brought that up because Solitude Aeturnus may still be fresh in a lot of people's minds because they did just play Hell's Heroes and they went over gangbusters. A lot of people have waited a long time to see them and they did not disappoint. And John and company had a great time up on that stage. On the subject of Solitude Aeturnus, John left us with a nice little bit of information. Apparently, they have an album coming out, a live performance from Poland that was recorded about 15 years ago.
It's streaming now.
It's streaming. Okay. It's not coming out in a physical format, but it's streaming. It's called Hour of Despair. So all you Solitude fans that have been looking for something new to listen to.
It's actually a remaster from a video that was done at a show in Poland, is what he said. So
yeah, there you go.
But
okay,
it's rethought with the band in control. Remix, remaster by the band. You can't go wrong with that.
Yeah.
I'm gonna go check it out.
Hour of Despair.
Mm-hmm.
Go check that out. Anyway, great conversation today with John Perez on the Talk Louder podcast.
Good morning, guys. Doing very good. And man, I really appreciate you guys having me on.
Yeah, it's been a long time in the making, huh?
Well, thanks. Yeah. I mean, I just, when I saw Jason about a month ago, I just thought, man, I'd like to just talk to you sometime.
Well, we don't, we're not neighbors,
I know.
Texas is big, and I don't run into you as much as I'd like to. And our relationship has never been taken for granted because I think of the distance. And it's not about me, but I feel like I'm busy enough. Sure, I'll take off more work if I can get it, but I got to move a bunch of other shit out of the way to take the work that I might deem better. You are not just a guitar player, songwriter. You're kind of like a producer and a tour manager and a soothsayer of some kind that I can't really figure out. And that's the other side of, other than you're my friend and I love you, that I wanted to have you on here to talk about stuff.
Well, that's awesome. Thank you, Jason. And Dave, you're pretty cool too.
I do what I can, man. I do what I can.
Well, we all do what we can.
We all do, man. We all do, man. It's a pleasure really to be with both of you guys, man. I really think highly of both you guys, man. And so thanks for having me here on the Sunday morning here.
So as Jason alluded to, you are a man of many talents and you wear a lot of hats.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'll explain that in a minute.
Tell us what's currently taking your time, most of your time.
As per the usual regular work that you have to do to be able to rock and roll. Sometimes some of us are not full throttle like Jason here, so when it's 24/7. Well, we are full throttle, but sometimes you have to work other jobs to make stuff work.
I have a job. I have a day job, and it ain't much. I've been there 20 years. So
I was under the impression that you've had day jobs, and you do have them sometimes.
Of course, yeah.
And that they just kind of come and go, though, very much on the come and go tip.
I've been teaching for School of Rock for 20 years.
Well, and so that kind of leads me to I say I have to work and I spend most of my time working, but we all probably, at least you and I, Jason, at least we're working kind of within the realms of what we do.
Correct.
With ourselves. I basically run a record store with Henry, Born Late Records. So I'm slinging music all day long, every day. And so it's music related, but it is a job. And, I spend a lot of time doing that.
Are you part owner in that record store? I've heard about this record store. I've not been there before. So you're just you clock in?
I should. Yeah. I'm not a part owner. Probably should have thought about doing that with him years ago, but no, I just, it's a long story with that, but I'm just kind of, next thing you know, 20 years have gone by type of thing,
Yeah.
And so I work for Henry, basically.
Okay,
Just kind of manning and running the store. I just work for him. I don't own that.
What's the store called again?
Born Late Records.
Born Late Records, because you always have the coolest booth at the record convention. That's where I bump into you.
Yeah, I know. I see you all the time there, Dave, and we won't be there this weekend coming up because we're doing the Dallas Guitar Show in town, and that's just as big as an event. So we opted to do that instead of the Austin show. But yeah, we come down to Austin as often as we can for those record shows.
I saw Henry last year at a record convention in not New Braunfels. Shirts. Yeah. And I ran into Henry. I bought some records from him, and we talked a bit. That was awesome. But you weren't there.
No, I haven't been doing as many of those ones lately, like Shirts or San Antonio. I'll go do the big ones with him in Austin, and we do some local ones around here too. But I've been slowing down and going out of town with him on these. I'll just be staying behind and running the shop while he's out in shirts
Sure.
on the weekend, and I'll run the shop while he's down there doing that.
Well,
usually.
that's kind of a coveted. Was that something that you thought about when you got into music as a kid? When you went into the record store when you're a teenager and you see the posters on the wall and the door with the beads hanging in
man.
front of it, you couldn't go back there because they were going to try to sell you a bong or some shit, you know. They had
very true where we were at here.
all the porno was back in there, and it was the head shop vibe, but it was a record store. That's my fantasy. There was a place in Corpus called Dirty Dave's, and we went in there.
Dirty Dave's.
Dirty Dave's.
This day.
No,
Dirty Dave, of course, right here.
This is metal. This is Metal Dave. That's not Dirty Dave. Anyway, it was awesome. I brought all my Kiss posters and records, and was that something that you thought you would ever do, work in a record store?
Yeah, absolutely. Nice. When I was a kid, when I was a kid growing up, I was pretty early on caught the music bug and the record. I'm not going to say record collecting because I don't collect records. I collect music, and they just happen to be on vinyl records. But collecting records was early on. And I loved records and record stores, and I always wanted to work at a record store. I grew up in San Antonio. I used to ride my bicycle to Sound Warehouse. I used to ride my bike to Rock Around the Clock Records, which was owned by Rick Erland, who did the CD Trader later on. But he had a Rock Around the Clock, which is fair bike riding distance, at least from my house. And bike riding distance could be far, actually, by the way.
Yeah, exactly.
And I mapped it. One time I went back to San Antonio to visit home again, and I thought, I'm gonna go travel. I did my paper route that I used to do from my home base. And I go, I'm gonna see what this was like as a kid and what I traveled. Sure enough, man, I was like, man, we rode our bikes far to Sound Warehouse. Our parents didn't know what we were doing. We were way off the course, But I always thought, man, it'd be so cool to work at a record shop. That was my aspiration, work at a record store. And then when I moved up here to the Dallas-Fort Worth area, Jason, we had our cool heavy metal record store there. The first one essentially was called Pipe Dreams, and it was a head shop / record store. It was a head shop that morphed into a part-time record store for a minute, and then the record started selling really well, and so then it became a full-on record shop, of which I ended up working there for a few years. In I think '87, I think I took up a job there for a couple of years, and we ended up doing a lot of good work there, bringing bands in. I think we brought Face Warning in for an in-store, Grim Reaper, other stuff. But it was cool. But anyway, the point is, it was a head shop / record store, and I always wanted to work at record shops. I just like the idea of being around music 24/7 and getting it to people, getting it across to people.
Well, when it went full, thank God it went full blown record store because you got more focus, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was going to say it smelled different in there.
Yeah,
because you didn't walk in, you didn't smell incense and hippie shit.
Right, you smelled wax records, polyurethane.
You smelled plastic instead of incense.
Cardboard. I've got a little fetish for the inside. By the way, one of my fetishes is the insides of cardboard record sleeves. They smell wonderful,
Yes. I always thought that they should make record covers scratch and sniff.
Why not? Yeah. Well, I actually really do like that old musty smell of the inside of record albums.
Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe I get it from when I was a kid. I just looking at my parents' records, and then you had nothing else to do back then, so you just stare at the record covers, and I guess you did everything that a little monkey would do, which includes like smelling it, And kids,
you're not wrong.
Smell the inside of your old April Wine records from the '70s and tell me what you get out of that.
Yeah.
Man, there's something about that ritual though that's just gone.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I could talk for days about the advantages of records, and why records were important or are important. I think, I've developed some high-minded philosophies as I've gotten older and put some meaning to it.
I'm sure you could write a book on the subject alone.
Well, real quickly, without going into an hour-long,
please
talk about it. With records, here's what I think why I like records, versus CDs. In the early days, people would argue, oh man, records sound warmer and they sound better than CDs, and it was very true at first. when they didn't have a grasp on mastering CDs very well. If you listen to any of the early CDs that were released in the late 80s, they all sound pretty shitty, real thin and just crappy sounding. And yeah, records did sound better at first. That's for sure. Absolutely. Because I used to AB them, and it wasn't like audiophile type shit. It was like, no, it's an obvious difference. However, technology has caught up, and they can make CDs sound like records now. So
Yeah.
you can put fake distortion, on there to mimic, the analog distortion to take.
Right.
So the idea is not that records sound better than CDs. They sound fine. Records do sound great if you've got a decent turntable, but more importantly, records, because they're cumbersome and because they're not as convenient as streaming, obviously, or even compact discs, back in the day, they're not as they're more cumbersome and harder to deal with. So as a result, it's more of it's an intentional thing to do. Like, so if I'm going to say, hey, I want my buddies Dave and Jason to come over and hang out for a little bit. Can you guys come over tonight? I've got this great new Watchtower reissue, remastered type stuff. You guys want to come over and check it out? Well, I can't today, man. How about tomorrow? All right, it's a date, man. Tomorrow night we'll all hang out. You guys come over, gather around, we look at the record, we talk about it, we put it on. Well, Rick Perry, my good buddy Rick, was over here last night. We did the same thing, we listened to a little bit of vinyl. We did cheat a little bit and go on to YouTube for a minute, but there's something about having that, like you said, Jason, the ritual of having a platter of vinyl, sharing it with your friends, looking at it, talking about it, getting your lazy ass up to have to turn over the record to side 2, which creates a break, and things, which makes it to where, you kind of snap out of it for a minute and you have to get up, turn the record over. That, I think, instills a little bit more of an attention span. Everybody can pay attention in class for 20 minutes, which is the average length of a record side. After about 20 minutes, you start wandering, thinking about, what the release date of the next Slayer record is or something, and
Sure.
you start wandering. And so 20 minutes into a CD or something, you've forgotten what the songs are. But in a record, after 20 minutes, you got to get your lazy butt up off the couch. You go, God dang it, I wish I didn't have to get up and turn this record over. But then you do. And then, you take a little break, you get another drink, you talk about it with your friends, you go, well, here's side 2, guys. And you put side 2 on and you go through it for another 20 minutes. So I think, in essence, it brings people together. Record albums can bring people together for a little communal music listening experience. And for diehard maniacs into music like all of us here, that's important to do. Gather people around and get them together with music.
Yeah. I was going to ask you, again, John always has the coolest booth at the record convention here in Austin and
well,
elsewhere.
Thank you. It's Henry's booth, but I work with him.
Well,
yes,
you work
cool
it, but yeah, it's not only not only the coolest, it's also one of the largest. It takes up this huge section of wall, and it's got all the killer metal and all the import stuff and the posters and the T-shirts, and I get to the record convention and I'm stuck at that table for at least an hour before I move on because there's so much to see. It's awesome. So what I wanted to ask you was, in all your days and years of working record conventions and working at record stores, what's the most collectible or valuable or rare thing you've ever come across?
Wow. We recently just came across something that was one of the most valuable things, and I don't remember what we ended up selling it for. We ended up cutting the price a little bit to give it to another dealer. Let me think for a second. Well, I tell you what, we sold. Okay, there's 2 parts to this. Recently, we just sold a punk rock single from a guy named Bobby Sox. Bobby Sox was a local legend around here in the late 70s, early 80s. He was super crazy OG punk, like you just know him. He's insane, and he had a band called Stickmen with Ray Guns. Yeah. They're like kind of like our version of the Butthole Surfers up here. They were just twisted punk. Like
my first Watchtower's first vinyl appearance on Cottage Cheese from the Lips of Death, Stickmen with Ray Guns, was on that record.
That's right, dude. I know.
And the Butthole Surfers.
Yeah. So tangent. Growing up in San Antonio, one of the last things I saw before I left for up here, which I left for here in the January of '82, but I went to Flipside Record Parlor, I believe, or Jam and Jelly. I came here right there off of New Braunfels by Alamo Heights High School, which is where I was in and about. but there was a flyer there, which I still have somewhere, advertising for a compilation record that was being put together, and submit your shit, type of stuff. And there was like a cow skull on the flyer. I could vaguely remember it, but that ended up being the cottage cheese record. And within, I guess, that a year or so, that record had come out, and somehow I found it. And I bought it, and so it had all these crazy fucking punk bands, and it had Watchtower on it, which I thought was hilarious. I was like, what is this Watchtower band? They don't sound like the others. It was like the Sesame Street theme song. One of these things is not like the other.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Watchtower track was pretty thrashy, but it was nowhere near punk like the rest of the record, That was a great record, but Stick Me With Ray Guns was on there. Anyway, back to the subject at hand. His single that he put out, a little 7-inch, had sold, I believe, for $1,200 or more.
Wow.
And we sold it for close to that recently. But we had some progressive rock record about 4 or 5 years ago. I cannot even remember the name. That's how these rare records are usually the ones that you don't know what they are. And this is the case of that. I don't know what it was, some progressive rock record. We sold it, I think, for almost $6,000.
Wow.
Yeah, and it was paid for. Now, the person tried to renegotiate on it, but we ended up getting that much money for that record. So that's the rarest record I've ever seen. That's absurd, but there you go.
What about for you? For you personally, what's something that's come into the store and you're flipping through it and trying to, inventory it or whatever, and you see it and you go, "Oh, this is coming home with me."
I am a professional record store clerk, meaning that I've got record store blinders. People have horse blinders. I've got record store blinders. I don't see things that way anymore, because if you did, you would never come home with a paycheck.
Right.
You just go, this is cool. This is cool. I need that. I kind of need this. I'd like this. And so I don't need anything. I literally do not need anything. I have everything I need music wise. When I have something I want, I get it. And that's it. So quite honestly, there's really nothing that comes to the store that makes me just go, oh God, I got to have this. Very, very rarely does that ever happen. But you have to train yourself to make it that way so that you don't just sit there wanting everything that comes into the store, man. I've just kind of reached that point now, dude, where I'm not lusting after any stuff anymore. I mean, I still want music and buy music and get music, but I don't freak out on stuff like that anymore. I leave that to everybody else. I make other people freak out on their records now.
Yeah.
Let's go back to 86, 87, I believe, when you started. You're already a young heavy metal, hard rock and roll guitar player. You have a bunch of friends and you want to form a band. How did you, let's talk about Rotting Corpse. How did you, because I know Rick Perry and you and just a bunch of like-minded folk were starting to play probably high school parties and keg parties and stuff like that. Tell us a little bit about that early DFW scene and living those mid 80s teenage years in Arlington area.
Well, I think we can all three of us agree that those were special time for us growing up.
Oh my God.
We're all the same age, and if you really put your head on it and really get into the emotional impact those years had on us. And we're going to talk strictly musical stuff here at this time, but other things, of course, you're growing up, you're at the age, and lots of things coming into light. But music-wise, that was a very exciting time to be involved in rock and roll music.
Yes.
We can all attest to that, man. We're all children of the 70s coming into the 80s and becoming young adults in the 80s. So I grew up in San Antonio, total rock fan from the beginning. I've been listening to music since I can remember being alive and being obsessed with it. So lucky for me, I grew up in San Antonio, so we had Kiss FM. I grew up with Kiss FM in San Antonio in the 70s, which was great. My rock education was awesome, man. And my rock and roll education started with 50s rock. When I was really young, I got into my parents' records. And then, of course, I got into Happy Days. Anything that was on TV that had to do with music, I was into. And Happy Days was awesome because the Fonz was on there and it was rock music. And so I got obsessed with 50s rock really early on.
The
And then I
Monkees.
morphed it
You
to the
watched
60s.
the Monkees?
Oh, dude, I love the Monkees, dude.
Yeah.
So we got into so I went from listening to the 50s rock as much as I could, and then listening to 60s rock, which I'm still obsessed with that today, and then going into 70s stuff and listening to 70s radio. But we were always, I say we, me, I was always interested in more harder rock sounds, you know, the harder the better, you know. Nazareth and BOC and Boston and Foreigner and all those bands, I like them, but they just weren't fitting the bill for me. I found Sabbath and Priest, I was set. But then I needed more, like a junkie, you know. I needed more. I needed faster. I need a better high. I need something heavier than Sabbath, if that's even possible, you know. But and so that enter the early 80s, you know. And so Jason and Dave, you guys know this too. We had just a barrage of bands coming from that time period, from overseas and then eventually from here. So really just digesting that stuff and becoming really into that earliest of metal scenes. I was very much into that, and that's what I wanted to do, was play really hard rock music. It took me a couple of years of just toying around with people up here. Once I moved up here, I didn't grow up here, so I didn't know anybody. So I had to just kind of start over from scratch when I moved up here. I practiced for a year or two and then started trying to form bands. So the original Solitude drummer, Brad Kane, started fooling around with me for a little bit. Then he moved, and then I was left alone. And then one day, this guy named Walter answers a guitar ad that I had up in one of the music shops. And I thought I was going to get the usual answers, you know, like, you know, well, what kind of bands are you into? Well, you know, at best, I would get Jesus Priest, Scorpions, and then be like, well, okay, there's a chance, you know. But this guy answered, he goes, I'm into like Sabotage and Metallica and Motorhead. I go, dude, we're forming a band. I don't even know how you play or anything, but let's form a band, dude. Because you really do just answered the right way, you know. And so I went to this guy Walter's house here in Arlington, and him and I hit it off right together. He Kill 'Em All had just come out like a year before, and he knew every riff on Kill 'Em All, which blew me away. I was like, dude, I only know like 3 songs from this record. You got every song down. What the shit? So that was an exciting time. That's when I formed Rotting Corpse with Walter in the early spring of '85, and we just sat in the bedroom for about 6-7 months before we got a gig together. And I think that was your question, Jason. That's how I started Rotting Corpse.
No, that was great, and it had a bunch of bonus features as you went along. I appreciate that. And you're talking. No, this is good. This is why we have a podcast. This is what it's all about.
Oh yeah, I
it's
forgot.
Kind of like we like to throw something out there, and then have it sort of family tree. You know, it grows branches and leaves and keeps on going. So.
Well, how'd you settle on the name Rotting Corpse? Because that's one of the greatest names ever.
Well, I always hated the name because I'm a little bit more level-headed sometimes. But then again, I have a little imp in me that likes to push the buttons as well. So I went along with it. But I didn't want to call it Rotting Corpse. I probably wanted to call it like, you know, Iron Fury or something. I don't know. You know, who knows? But I probably didn't have enough ideas. That's why I got ousted. So Rotting Corpse was chosen by, I think, probably Walter or who knows what, at Walt and Dave. But, you know, as it was explained to me what Rotting Corpse, there was a meaning behind that. I was like, okay, I can go with that then. So, but how am I going to tell my grandma what band I'm in? You know?
Yeah.
Hey, Ito, hello, Ito, what's the name of your band? You know.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a good boy, man. I'm a good boy. I was not some punk that hated my parents and family and stuff. I love my family and teachers and friends and stuff. I didn't want to tell people, you know, I am a nice guy still, but my band is called Rotting Corpse. What?
That's why I asked. Yeah,
I asked.
I worked for this place called Traders Village up here, which is the biggest flea market in the universe. And in 82, 83, I'm sorry, it would have been later, 84, 85. A bunch of good old boys that run that place, you know, Texas guys, you know, and so, and they all knew me as the kid that was working for them that had a little bit of long hair and was, you know, a little bit something or another. And I remember one time they go, John, what's this band you got? I was like, it's Rotting Corpse, Mr. Taggart. What? Rotting Corpse? What is that? I never forget. What is that? Some kind of acid rock? I just went, oh man, yes, sir, it's acid rock.
Well, I asked because number one, I wanted to know it's a great band name. It'll certainly get attention. But like you, I grew up in San Antonio, and in the early mid 80s, you know, I'm starting to see all these flyers around town, and I'd see flyers for Watchtower and Slayer and Juggernaut, and you know, there was these bands there was a movement going on. But I remember
Yes.
seeing Rotting Corpse on a flyer, and I was just like, "Whoa, that's next level, man! That's got to be good."
Well, we were just young kids fed up with the dinosaur. What we thought. Now say I've had enough of Nazareth and BOC and all the '70s bands. Of course, now I realize the error of my youthful ways, and those bands are king, you know. But we were fed up with that. We were restless, and we wanted to fuck shit up, and we were just tired of seeing people that weren't into music on the level that we were into. And we were into the intensity factor of metal and the heavy factor and just the punch your face in factor of metal. And so the early 80s metal gave us that, and it just got more and more as time went on. So we were just fed up with the old ways, man. And the old ways was the corpse, and we're rotting the corpse, man. We're coming in and just gonna fuck shit up. Gone are the days of just drugged out, junkied out, fucking blues based fucking endless jams of nothingness and boring shit and not keeping it real, you know. I mean, Metallica kept it real, man. Look, they dressed just like we have to dress, you know.
Yeah.
Our jeans had holes in them because we were fucking punks, not because we paid $150 to have pre-torn jeans for us, you know.
Sure.
Right.
So anyway, that just spoke to us, man, and we were we wanted to just change things up a little bit, you know. And we were early on in that. We were pretty much one of the first bands to do that from around here. There were pockets of other guys starting to get together, and that was my job back then. I think was to wrangle everybody up. And so by doing that, I would just, if I just saw a dude with a T-shirt on that looked metal, I just try to become their friend back then, because it was a rare thing, you know.
Yeah.
If you saw a dude with a Metallica shirt on in '84 or '5, you're like, dude, that guy actually knows who Metallica is.
Yeah.
It wasn't as known of an entity as it was. And certainly if you got even more obscure bands in '84 and '85, you're like, we got to get this scene together because it's still separated, you know. And
yeah,
so
it's not branded yet.
It wasn't branded yet, and right, and it wasn't compartmentalized as much.
Right.
It was all metal at that time, you know.
Right.
And so for a good couple of years, I liken it to the, you know, which I'm a huge follower of the counterculture movement of the '60s, and I was obsessed with hippie culture and all that for years. I still am, but and they always used to complain about how, you know, by late '67 it was over, and I'm like, how is that possible? And now I understand that, you know, as years have gone by. It was really just a couple of short years, which were the true glory years of the metal movement. And then it became a little co-opted. I'm not saying it was not great as years went on. It still is. It still is great. But the peak kind of experience of that was, I would guess, around '85, '6, and '7, when things really came together, and all of a sudden the underground was big, but it was still underground, and still we were bonded together by a mutual understanding and need for heavier, more forceful music. And all of us were part of that, man.
Yeah. There's something inspiring about catching a movement in its infancy, and that becomes very near and dear to your heart. And it kind of, if you were there, it never gets out of your system. You know, it might get pushed to the back burner and life might get in the way. But if you were there, if you didn't step in at 88 and start, you know, listening to metal because you saw Guns N' Roses, like if you knew Celtic Frost, you know, in the early days, and you found like-minded people, that'll stay with you forever.
I agree, dude. I know Jason will too, because that's why we're here right now at 11:30 on Sunday. You know,
that's right. So
that's exactly right, man.
I like how Dave was saying a minute ago about he would see flyers around town. I mean, that was part of our daily craft was do I want to eat lunch, or do I need to make some more flyers? Do I need gas in the car, or do I need to make some more flyers?
Yeah.
Well, I got to have gas in the car so I can drive around town and pimp these flyers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that was like a daily problem for a young teenager in a metal band.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But not only were you seeing the late great, you know, the bands you mentioned from the San Antonio era, and bands that were from all over Texas, Dave, that were including Rotting Corpse that was coming down there. But you saw things that made you think, like, well, what kind of fucking music is Rotting Corpse? What kind of music is Hell Preacher? What kind of music is, it's interesting, you know.
It is, man. Well, because things were changing rapidly, and so bands were getting a little bit more extreme with their approach and their names, and flyers were. I mean, I preach this all the time to the young kids, and not as an adult telling you that, you know, in my day I walked 5 miles to school in bare feet type of thing, but it's kind of like likening it to a calculator. You know, you should know the math, the workings, the mechanics of how a calculator figures stuff out. So just as today, shows are promoted via the internet essentially, and back then though it's more physical. To know about a show, you would have to find a flyer posted somewhere, you know, get the word out. And so it was important to go flyering and go to the shows the week before and flyer the parking lot, or put them up everywhere. We couldn't put them up online, and you know, so you had to put them at key points like record stores we're talking about that were meeting places for metal and stuff. You put those flyers up there. So, and flyers were a bit of a lost art too, because we would cut and paste, literally, that's where the term came from, and you make your own flyers, which was in itself kind of a little project, like you said, Jason. You know, just like, let's put these flyers together, and we got to go make 300 of them, you know, so who's got the money to go do that? Well, let's pitch in, you know, and do it. And then you go flyering, you know, you just hand flyers out. And
I used to draw flyers for my friends in San Antonio bands. I used to do flyers for especially a band called Psych. And I used
Scythe, okay.
I used to do their flyers all the time. And I was never a musician, but I was always in the scene. And the flyers were like, you go to the record store, obviously, to flip through the records. But I got as much enjoyment out of looking at the flyers and seeing who's coming to town, and wow, that artwork is awesome. And that name is like Rotting Corpse. Wow, that's got my attention. You know, so the flyers were, you know, as much, they were as interesting to me as the music that was being sold at the store.
Because think about it, man, Dave, if you think about it, it's hitting the nail on the head. And the reason being is that we could get creative with a flyer. We could go, hey, man, let's put this skull right here, stabbing this dude in the eyeball. And out of the eyeball will come the name of the band, man. So you can get like creative and create these like kind of cool little, you know, little one-page little crazy ads, you know, for your thing, which would be interesting to look at, you know. And so I agree. Definitely. There was a little bit of an art form to it.
There was an art form. And if you were involved in it, like you said, whether you're cut and pasting or like me, if you're drawing, you know, you get fully invested in that aspect of it. It does become a project, and it's sort of your stamp, and you know you're going to go plaster this all over town. So you want it to look cool, and you want people to...
You want to grab people's attention somehow.
Yeah. So, it was like...
Speaking of that, then, if I'm sorry to interject, but it reminds me of this, because Steve Murphy so we were very keen on that, okay? And just by luck, Walter's stepdad, Frank, was the president of a printing company. So we got good deals on printed stuff. So we decided the first flyer we would do for our very first show should just be badass. And I wish I should have been more prepared, but it's a flyer. I'm sure it's online somewhere, but we made the flyer on Carter cardstock, and it was the Rotting Corpse for our first shows at Rascals. But we printed it on reflective silver type of paper.
I remember that flyer.
Yeah,
I remember that flyer.
Cost a fortune to do, you know, normal wise, but we had to pay for them. But we got them at whatever the cost deal was that Frank did. But we thought that was really important to make an impression. You know, make this crazy harder stock silver flyer that reflects on you type of thing, and people won't forget that. And
that's metal.
Yeah, it was metal. It said so on the flyer. It's right. I think I put on there, it said total thrash, death, speed, hardcore metal. My friend always made fun of me going, dude, I know that when I went to your show, it wasn't just going to be partial metal. I knew it was going to be total metal, because that's what I put on the thing. You put total thrash, speed, hardcore. Not partial. It's like, it was total. Yeah, it was complete, man, 100%. You know,
you got 25 adjectives on your flyer.
Yeah.
Tell everybody how bad they're going to get their ass kicked.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this. I don't recall if you were still in Rotting Corpse or not, but this Dark Angel tour.
Right when I left the band.
You left right before that gig.
Correct. Yeah, but I left just before that started going down. But that was another example of Walter making a badass poster out of that.
Yeah.
because we had the advantage of getting them done, you know, at a reasonable cost.
Yeah, that's like a 28 by 14 or 28
Yeah.
by 17.
It's a cool poster too. I
Yeah.
think I have one here, but no, I left the band by that point in time. I decided I had enough of what I thought were the limitations of thrash metal type of thing, and I just
Sure.
wanted to just do something a little bit different, you know. And but yeah, I left the band. They went on to do quite a bit of work after I left Rotting
Oh, yeah.
Corpse.
I remember that. I used to have that poster, and I think I think I got it at a record store when Anthrax and Metal Church were doing an in-store, and I had nothing else for them to sign, so they signed the back of that poster.
Wow.
And so I always had the poster, but I always had it turned around so I could display the autographs instead of the actual poster.
But you know what? That's like a bonus when you find it years later. It's like, holy shit, Anthrax and Metal Church are on the back of this Dark Angel Rotting
Corpse. Dark Angel thing, man. I got Kurt Vanderhoof to sign.
Yeah. What is the status of Rotting Corpse today? Because I know you hasn't the band reactivated over the years?
Well, kind of. Just to on and again and off again. We got together to do a memorial for Luke Brewer, who was the guitar player that replaced me eventually. He passed away a few years ago, and so we got together and did a little bit of a reunion show at a local club here, and that was lots of fun and good times. And right now, what's happening is Steve Murphy, the bass player, has just taken up the mantle on this, but he's got it to where all the demos that Rotting Corpse did are going to be released on vinyl for the first time. So that's coming out here within the next month or two on Turkey Baster Records. Oh, yeah. And so there's a little bit of online hoopla going on for Rotting Corpse. Steve has been throwing everybody down memory lane with photos and stuff lately. And that's really all that's going on is the stuff's getting released on vinyl, and we may do a show or two just to commemorate it and have some fun again. You know, I don't have time to do extensive shows with Rotting Corpse, but it'd be fun maybe to do one or two things here and there, you know.
Sure. Yeah. I think that here's a good segue. You were working on Solitude maybe during your last moments in Rotting Corpse. You started to think about your next jump, if you will.
Yeah, for sure, man. It was no secret that I like more heavier stuff from the get-go. When I formed Rotting Corpse, I had to admit I sort of settled a little bit in that. What I mean by that is I was always very much into the Sabbath sound. For me, that was just the top shelf. That's what I wanted to associate most with metal, was that Sabbathy sound. And so I always wanted to do a band that was in that vein, even really super early on. But you know, finding anybody into underground metal in the early 80s was really tough. And finding anybody into underground Witchfinder general metal was impossible.
Right, or Trouble, or even
nobody was into
go deeper into that.
There was like literally a handful of bands doing the Sabbath sound, which was really what appealed to me. But when I got someone that just said they were into bands like Metallica and Sabotage, I'm like, that's fine. Let's just go with that, and Slayer. So I went thrash for a little bit because I loved that as well too. But so it was hard to find people into like really heavier stuff like that. And what was the question?
I was moving towards that sort of like the split, right?
Well, right.
Amicable, like moving into your new thing, which would have been Solitude.
Even in the early days, in the beginnings of Rotting Corpse, they used to kind of make fun of the fact that I was always complaining that we didn't have heavy enough songs. Walter came up with that song "War on Drugs" to appease me because it was a slower, mid-tempo, down-tuned song. Here's your freaking doom song, dude. So I'm like, oh, okay, something heavy. I always wanted to play heavier and heavier. Right. In my world, if I would have had Rotting Corpse be exactly the way I had envisioned it at the time, we would have come off sounding like Celtic Frost or Obituary or Death or something. I wanted it to be really heavy and thrashy. It went more of in a punky direction, which is fine too, but it wasn't where my head was at. But we would goof around with early Candlemass riffs and Rotting Corpse even, you know, and so when I left the band, it was just obvious for me to go pursue exactly what I wanted to do music-wise. Damn the consequences, whether people were into it or not, which they weren't. I just had to do what I wanted to do, make metal music that I thought would stand the test of time. That was my goal with Solitude. It's like, you know, I'm going to dig back into my roots and remember about Judas Priest, Stained Class, remember about Black Sabbath, remember about classic heavy metal, classic hard rock. And that's what I want to do, is create classic, hard, heavy metal music the way I see it, which is doomy and thick and heavy, but melodic. That was the beginning of Solitude right there, coming right out of a Rotting Corpse.
So I don't recall any shows. I mean, and whether Watchtower was on the bill or not, but I recall, Death Tripper.
Of course,
and Rodney Dunsmore gets the credit for reminding me, because I told him that we were having you on the show today. And he just goes, the singer for Death Tripper was Solitude's first singer. And I'm like, wait, what? I don't even know it. I either knew that and completely forgot about it.
Yeah, dude, I know how it is, Jason. I mean,
wow.
Maybe one time you knew that, but I'm trying to make it very quickly here, but his name is Chris Gabehart.
That's right.
Death Tripper was one of the noisiest, craziest bands on the planet. They all sound like they were playing different songs at the same time. And it was just chaos, man. But I thrived on that at that time. So I thought Death Tripper was great because they were just so out of control. I mean, they weren't technically good, but they were noisy, and they were an early version they were like our version of Sodom or something, or, it was just hellish shit, Dude, again, I'll try to make it quick, but I came across a singer for Death Tripper originally at the infamous San Antonio Slayer versus Slayer show in '84. Mm-hmm. And Brad Kane and I had driven down there for that show because we were on the tip. We knew about it somehow. And we drove down for that infamous show. And outside, waiting to get in, there's a guy right behind me. And it turned out to be Chris Gabehart. And he was talking crazy shit. I go, man, this guy's a crazy motherfucker down here, man. Like, all right. And then I saw him later in the night getting kicked out for crowd surfing too much at the venue. And I thought, that dude's a crazy fucker. And then I found out later on, within a year, I find out there's a Death Tripper thing, and I go and I buy Death Tripper demos, and like, this is the worst thing I've ever heard. I love it. It's like, their first demo was like antimatter, dude. It was like, what the shit? This just ruined my cassette deck, man. But they did technically get better as time went on. But I love their intensity, and I love that they were just fighting against everybody for no good reason. And so as it would come, I would become the No Death Tripper because I bought their tapes at Hog Wild. Then I would organize a few gigs with them coming up here with Rotting Corpse. And then Chris Gabehart tried to get me to join Death Tripper in the later days of Rotting Corpse. He asked me if I'd be interested in joining Death Tripper because he told me that the band was going to move more in a doomy direction, like they were going to incorporate more Sabbath into their sound.
Here we go.
Because that's what he was into. He was really into Sabbath, and as much as he hated Trouble's lyrics, he loved Trouble the band.
Yeah.
And so Chris Gabehart was really into Sabbath heavy shit. So I said, I can't join Death Tripper, dude. I'm about to start a new band. And then Chris Gabehart and I talked, and Chris is a very creative, very intelligent guy. And so him and I formed Solitude with Brad Kane, and Chris would fly up here. And he'd fly up here on weekends and we'd rehearse.
Wow.
We were committed. He did that for a long time, for a good year. He'd fly up to rehearse. And he's very creative. Not the greatest vocalist necessarily in the world, but I was okay with that. I thought as long as he can be creative and carry a melody or a tune, Bob Dylan's a terrible vocalist, but there you go. I mean, it doesn't matter. It matters what you do with your voice. And so I thought
the word terrible may not be the right word, but I know what you mean.
I'm joking, of course.
Of course. Yeah.
Terrible by some people's standards.
Sure.
From a technical standpoint, maybe.
Right. Well, and Chris was not a terrible singer. No, he just wasn't. He's not like a Rob Halford kind of guy.
There's just no sugar.
Right. He was very creative. So I liked what he was doing, and he helped me create those early songs. And so we had a great relationship. And then Chris eventually just needed to find his way out, and he stayed down in San Antonio and bowed out. And that's when we got a different lineup. I got Robert in at that time, which was, of course, great, to get Robert because he's outstanding. But those early days were with Chris Gabehart from Death Tripper, dude. Unlikely combination.
I think that that's historic. I wanted to bring that up, and it was if I don't say so myself, it was a great. From what we were talking about prior, slipping into
the
beginning.
After this, just go take a quick check on those early Solitude demos. It's called Justice for All, the demo, which came
Wow.
up for Metallica like 6 months. We called it And Justice for All. But
Weird.
check this out, and you can see that how he was singing compared to Death Tripper, which was just, just out of control,
Mania.
insanity,
Yeah.
Yeah. But I love that, and I liked working with people on the edge like that a little bit.
You remember this? My camera's not going to pick it up.
It's a white piece of paper.
Yeah, it's
A
not.
blank ticket. Yeah, I
You'll
see
have
it.
to read. You have to read it.
There it is.
It is. Okay, yeah.
Okay, it's a 1992 Solitude Aeturnus ticket for $8. You guys were opening for Paul Di'Anno's Killers.
Is that for the San Antonio show?
Yes.
That was the last show of a 6-week run we did with him. That was the last night of the tour.
Yeah, you told me when I saw you at the record convention one time, I brought this up, and you had some Di'Anno story. I can't remember, but tell me a little bit about touring with Paul Di'Anno.
Well, first of all, I loved Iron Maiden since I got the Killers record in 1980, whatever it was, 81, I think. And I thought Maiden was awesome. I was just like, holy shit. And then I think you guys kind of helped me out on this. I can't remember sometimes now, but Maiden toured with Priest, I believe, on the Killers tour.
Yeah.
And I remember seeing that, of course, and it, of course, made an insanely huge impression on me. So just imagine, that I'm thinking Iron Maiden is the shit, and I know they replaced their singer, but then like 10 years later, I'm on tour with the singer from Maiden. It was one of those earlier pinch me moments where you're like, wow, man, I'm fucking hanging out with my new best buddy, Paul Di'Anno. He don't know that he's my new best buddy yet, but he is. I'll make sure he knows about it. Hey, Paul, what's going on? Yeah, it's John Perez, actually. No, you get the point, dude. I mean, it was just cool fucking touring with Paul Di'Anno, dude. I was like, wow, this is fucking great. We get to fucking tour with Di'Anno. His band was really nice guys. We're still good friends with those guys, with a couple of those guys to this day. We chat with each other online. So it was really cool to tour with Di'Anno. It wasn't lost to me that we were touring with one of our idols, and we got to see him in a for real setting, like this is the real deal. So it was I wouldn't say eye opening. We weren't that green at that time, but still you learned a lot, and it was just really great to tour with him. He was awesome. He hadn't lost any power by that point. He was singing great. Yeah. Just a great experience with Di'Anno, man. Lots of little mini stories from that tour, but that last night of the tour was funny. We played typical tour pranks on each other, and they fucked with us, we fucked with them. And anyway, at the end of the tour, we decided to drive home, but John Covington, our drummer, jumped off the stage that night and broke his fucking ankle. Oh. And so we drove up from San Antonio to try to get home as quickly as possible for our poor John Covington. Luckily, he's a tough guy. We break down in Buddha. Buddha in 1992 was not Buddha in 2024.
No, there's nothing there. There's no.
There was one thing there eventually, an overnight truck stop thing, which we had to sit overnight and wait for. Our car broke down. I forgot to mention that. Our van broke down on the way. A catalytic converter clogged up, and so we broke down. So poor John's sitting there overnight with a swollen ankle, just broken. Total misery. We didn't get on the road until the next day, like at noon or 1 or something. We just slept in the van and stayed up all night. A glorious way to end a great tour. Just a slap in the fucking groin. Yeah, that was great. And then we ruined the van. The guy. We rented the van. We didn't tell the dude we were going to go to Canada, Florida, and San Francisco, and everywhere else in between. And we brought the van back. He's like, what the hell? Where do you boys drive to? Like, and the van was broken. He goes, it'll be under warranty because the miles are still there. And it wasn't, because we had gone way over the mileage. He goes, you should be able to fix that under warranty, get it fixed, because it's underneath the mileage cap. And it wasn't. He's like, that's impossible. It's like, no. Yeah, we drove like, I don't know, 13,000 miles or something, man. Whatever it was. Not 13,000, but, Anyway,
a few thousand, I'm sure.
Yeah, it was. We literally went to Canada. That was a jumped in the fire on that. We went all over the country on that one. Lots of fun though. I love touring with Di'Anno, of course, man.
Yeah. The thing I remember about this show is I actually interviewed Paul Di'Anno backstage in the green room at the showcase. What passed for the green room back then. But
cool,
this is before I knew anything about working through a publicist or any of that. I just showed up at the back door at sound check with my tape recorder and hoping to snag him, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I snag him and we go into the dressing room, and I'm total fanboy because this is the early stages of me doing this, so I'm not very professional yet.
Yeah. Okay.
So I've got my albums under my arms and I'm ready to get them all signed and everything. And we sit down on a couch and I start this is back when I smoked cigarettes. So
Yeah.
Paul Diano was fascinated by American cigarettes because I had Marlboros.
Yeah.
And he's like, he said, I'll talk as long as you keep the smokes coming. And I'm like, great. So I just kept feeding him cigarettes and we sat there for probably an hour rolling tape. And then at the end of it, he signed my, self-titled Maiden, my Killers, my Made in Japan vinyl. He signed a couple pictures that I had torn out of some magazines, and all that stuff is framed and hanging around my house still today. But that was at your show.
That's cool, man. That's wow. Small world, dude. I thought I recognized you from the way back days, dude. I must have seen you there. Yeah, yeah.
I looked a lot different in the way back days. My hair was like yours in the way back days. Yeah.
What's it? Oh, like gray and stringy, and
It wasn't gray, but it was parted in the middle and all one length. And
Yeah.
Cousin it. Yeah.
yeah. So what's the status on Solitude today? Are you guys are you doing anything?
I just saw
currently, or-
them crush at Hell's Heroes.
That's
Dave.
right. You just
I
did
just
Hell's
saw
Heroes.
them destroy Houston, Texas at the White Oak Amphitheater.
well,
Mind blowing.
that's what we're doing is crushing and destroying. Apparently, from what I've been told,
You heard it here first.
There you go.
Thank
So
you,
that's
Jason.
I saw it with my own eyes. I was blown away.
Well, thanks, Jason.
Standing on the
glad- I didn't know-
side of the stage, going, "What the fuck is happening right now?" Because
Dude,
it
I'm
was,
glad I didn't know if you saw us or
nah,
not.
it was
but glad you
transcendent.
saw
It was transcendent.
Well, that's amazing, dude. Thank you for that, man. I can't lie to you and say that doesn't make me feel great. It makes me feel awesome that Jason, you watched us from the side stage and you thought it was cool. Solitude was started that band in '87. We went and did a long run up till about 2011 and 12, somewhere around there, and then we just kind of put a lid on it for a little bit. We just just how it goes, man. You guys don't understand that as well as anybody else. That sometimes there's a shelf life to bands, especially if you're not making a career out of it, and we're not dependent on income from that. So we stopped doing activities for a long time. I never said we broke up, but we just weren't going to do anything for however long, and until an opportunity or a situation presented itself that was proper. Hell's Heroes was a proper situation, man. It was it's so. Dude, this I almost don't want to tell you this because it's I don't almost want people to even hear this, but because it sounds silly, dude. It does sound silly, so I'm going to open up and tell you this. It's small, but I always thought, I go, dude, if Solitude's going to come back, I don't need my ego stroked, okay? So I'm not going to come and just play some gig just to play it and get 100 of our friends to come out and do some headlining show around town or whatever. There's a lot of work to getting us to where we need to be. And so I thought, if we're ever going to come back and play a show, it needs to be proper. And if we're going to come back and play a show in Texas, I don't want to just headline some trees or some club. It needs to be big. Mind you, I had no idea how this would fall into place, okay? Like, I'm just like, it needs to be like on a big stage. I go, it's impossible. We're not a big enough band to go play bigger stages like that. So, but if we did come back, we should be on a proper stage. And I'll tell you what, it'd be cool if it was like outdoors and it was a nice, cool, windy night. And I could just picture us on stage, hair blowing from the wind, and it's nice and cool. And, it fucking looks cool when you got long hair and it's blowing in the wind and you got your jackets are blowing and the breeze is flowing. It does look cool and it feels cool. As you know from doing many stages, sometimes it's nice not to be on a stage where you're boiling alive, and you're standing on stage, you're like, man, I feel comfortable. This nice breeze feels great. And, it makes me look cool. And dude, I thought that's the way we should play. I go, but how's that going to happen? It's not. So whatever, 6 months go by and that still doesn't happen. I'm still not on stage with my hair blowing in the wind somewhere in front of a bunch of people. That ain't going to happen.
Like a heart video.
Yeah. Totally, mate. But that was a little fantasy thing. That's the way I'd want to come back. It ain't going to happen, but whatever. That's it should be triumphant and glorious if we come back. Otherwise, just no big deal. We're out, But that's how it happened. And it was a nice, cool night, and the wind was blowing. And it was 65 degrees, and I was comfortable.
The sky
And we
was
had
the sky was
3,500
gray.
people there.
The sky was gray with a moon. It just looked like a Solitude Aeturnus album cover.
Yeah.
Dude, it did, dude.
The whole night looked like your album cover.
That's what I'm saying. It's kind of cheesy to say this out loud, but all these things were right. So for me, it was kind of a perfect night. We were pretty good that night. We could have been better. There's things I can complain about, but it was perfect for me. And dude, I mean, Jason, you experience a lot more than I do, man. But it's nice to get up on the stage and just have 3,000 people cheering you on, and especially for a band like Solitude, because we never got that much adulation. We pocketed our own little thing, carved out our little niche, and got popular within our own little realms. But we were never really accepted by that many people, especially in Texas. And I know that this show is involving a lot of people from outside of Texas, but it was really a nice feeling, man, to get up there and just deliver some really quality heavy metal music to people and get that feedback back from them, making us feel very appreciated and welcomed. And what can I say, man? It was just rock stars for the weekend, and then right back to real world after that. But it was nice to be up on a stage and have a lot of people thinking it was kick ass. I mean, nothing else to say.
There's a lot of bonuses about it. Hell's Heroes has kind of saved rock and roll in a roundabout way. I think that.
Yeah.
You know where I'm. I mean, they reunited my band. They reunited your band. It's and all of these bands that came over from Germany and shit to play or whatever, wherever they were from. It was like global.
Yes,
and
very much
for it
so,
to
man.
for it to be basically sold out all weekend, and have Queensryche playing the old songs.
Oh, dude,
I can't. How do you not say, wait, this is way too fantastical to even be happening right now? How
I fully support it, dude. I think it's an awesome event. Christian is doing such a fantastic job.
Oh my God. Yep.
I love and dude, there's a lot of good ethics behind what he's doing too. If you've spoken to him, he's doing things for the right reasons, and he's keeping
one word comes to mind. Love.
Yeah. Love all everywhere. Yeah, man, love, brother. I am an old hippie. I'm telling you.
Hey, think about it. I went and saw Slayer, and I brought a coworker, my buddy Jamie, and we're watching Slayer. This was at the Moody Theater here, I don't know, 7 years ago or something, and Slayer. They play 3 songs and they stop, and the crowd is just going ape shit. Total just roar, 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 roar. And Tom Araya is just standing there at the microphone smiling. And he starts laughing. And he's just smiling. This goes on for 5 minutes. 7 minutes. Just roar, 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 roar. And Tom goes, you know what this is right here? You know what this is right here? And I leaned over to my friend Jamie and I said, love. And the next word out of Tom's mouth was, this is love.
Yeah, that's great, dude.
So I use that all the time because he's not wrong. I knew what he was going to say. It was transcendent in every fucking way, that everyone in there was helping each other out in some form or fashion, all through music. It doesn't matter that it's Slayer. It's kind of cool that it was Slayer.
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, dude. Rick and I were talking about this last night, Jason, and he was recapping a little bit of his, because Rick Perry went down there just as a regular person. He bought a ticket and just went down and just was out in the general populace, all weekend. So I was getting his take from that angle, and he said it was awesome. He goes, dude, there was not a single fight. Everybody was cool with each other. Yeah. It was just a real good camaraderie. And I think it's at that level right now where all those people that are going to that show it just shows you the love that music brings, and the love that's within the heavy metal community. I've met some of the finest human beings on the planet through heavy metal music. I love music, period, man, all kinds. And you guys do too, I know. But more specifically within our genre that we've been working in the last 40 years, I can tell you I've met the finest human beings in the metal world, dude. I'm so fortunate to know as many people as I know, and all these years. It's just good, man, to know there's good people bonded together initially through music, and then we go from there, right?
Yeah.
So we're bonded together. Jason, you and I are bonded together through our mutual love of music. That's how we became friends. That's how we've maintained friendships. But it goes beyond that. We have a respect for each other. We don't hang out every day necessarily, but we have a deeper respect, understanding for each other's stuff. And it starts with our love of rock and roll music.
Yeah.
And same with you, Dave, too. I mean, we see each other a couple of times a year at a record show. So, but I have respect for you, and it starts with music, and we have a love for each other and within our community. And that's awesome, man. That's awesome. I mean, going off on a tangent here, man. Peace and love to all the metalheads out there.
I love it. I love it.
True it is, though, man.
I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. So with
guys, just real quick, dudes, I got to leave in 30 minutes to go to work.
Okay.
So just so we know where we're at, and can I get some more coffee real quick before?
Yeah, be comfortable. We
want
want
second cup.
Feed the dog, whatever you got to do.
Let me just get a quick up here, man. Thanks, guys.
Of course. So while he's gone, we can talk about him.
Okay, start talking shit now.
Yeah.
No, this is great. He reminds me of Eric Larson.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's a little bit of that.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, man. Yes. Okay. Right on.
Okay, and cut. So listen, you have you still have a record label or two different record labels? No? Brain Ticket?
I don't, man. So
okay.
And I wanted to touch on that because you guys mentioned that earlier, but Dave, you said, I'm a guy that wears many hats. Well, and that's true. And I've had to analyze myself over the last year or two. And I realized that my purpose on this planet was really to connect people to music. And I'm a musician, but not really. I mean, I've learned enough to get away with it. I do love playing music, and I started on piano. I love playing guitar. I'm slightly better than average, but it's not really, I'm less of a musician, and I'm more about connecting the dots with music. So I've worn so many different hats over the years. I've worked at record stores. I'm a musician. I write for fanzines. I'm a tour manager. I ran a record label, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And all of this, I realize, is an attempt to work within the realms of music, because that's what I love. And that's what I'm doing. I connect the dots with people to music. That's everything I do is that's what it leads to, including running a record label and creating a record label. That's exactly what I did in '95. I was kind of at a crossroads. I thought, what can I do as a career? I mean, I just all I want to do is music. I can't think of anything else. So I decided the best way to do it is to get music to people. That's what a record label does, is you sign bands you think are worthy, and you promote them and try to sell their music to people. So that's why I started Brain Ticket in 1995. And we started with a band called Sorcerer, who is going on to this day. They were a obscure doom band out of Sweden, and they put out some of the highest quality heavy metal at the time that was unreleased. So I thought everyone needs to hear this. It's a shame that this has gone unheard. So that was the idea and concept behind Brain Ticket, which is just make available music that I personally thought, it's all biased to my personal opinions, that I thought should be more well known. And so that's what Brain Ticket did for about 10 years. But man, I lost so much money on the record label. By the end of the days, it was like, it wasn't even paying for itself. It was more like, when do I have more money to put into it? And the last few releases just tanked, and I figured they would do well, but they didn't. It was the beginning of the end of the CD era, which is the early 2000s and early to mid 2000s. And that just knocked me out of the ballpark. I eventually just threw the towel in, and I couldn't run a label at the level that I needed to run it at to try to make a living from it and
right.
do well. I mean, it was tough to get rid of even just a pressing of 1,000 CDs by 2004 or 5.
Yeah, that's almost impossible these days. Like,
I mean, yeah, it kind of is.
Small labels such as yourself are pressing like 100, 200, and if you're peddling it at record stores or some kind of online store, and like literally hustling on a weekly, daily basis on socials, trying to push new releases, you're still sitting on 50 copies and 5 years later. So
Yeah, I agree, man. I still
yeah, it's
haven't
tough.
figured out how to solve that problem. Obviously, people are putting records out, but you guys know as well as I do, records are not selling the way they used to sell back in
Right.
the day. You know, yeah, they're selling way more than usual now, but not to the level where you can sustain a living from selling enough records. You
Right.
can make a little bit of money and keep going forward, but it's not at the level it used to be at still. You know, physical media is not there. So I can't do the label anymore. It's just physically, I mean, financially impossible to do it, you know.
Well, you were doing, it was a passion project, and
Sure.
you know,
Passion,
you
yeah.
pushed a lot of cool stuff through.
We had some great bands on Brain Ticket. We had Las Cruces from San Antonio, which I
Yep.
totally believed in that band. They were really such a great live band. They wrote great songs, had a great sound. They were one of our flagship bands for a long time. We had Archie Bunker, Last Chapter. I had Oversoul, which was my friend Dennis Cornelius from Oklahoma now, who just recently passed away. So we did all kinds of heavy stuff, and I'm also very interested in psychedelic rock. So I did a few psychedelic rock albums on the label. Damn the Consequences, you know, I knew it was going to be it's a limited reach, you know. Not a lot of my friends are into Beatlesque pop psych, you know, like
Right.
I am.
Right.
Yeah.
I just figure everybody should be, so I put it out, damn it, and ram it down people's throats, you know. And
Well, that's that passion project.
Yeah.
You're flying a freak flag, as they used to say. And
I love it, man. I
yeah.
love freak rock too.
How did you get into tour managing, and who was your first? Who called you? Go, hey, dude, we need a tour manager. You know anybody? And you were like, fuck it, I'll do it. How did you fall?
That's pretty much how it went, really.
I figured.
Well,
Tell
I mean,
us.
all the years of experience with Rotting Corpse and Solitude, I had to handle all the business, you know, with both bands, more so Solitude. But so I had to handle business, which meant learning how to read record contracts, like from Roadrunner Records, just learning the ins and outs of the business. We were already vested in the underground scene in terms of being connected and creating lasting connections and relationships. So I don't know, man. You just it's just one of those things, man. What was the question again? I'm sorry.
No, it's all right. Look, a squirrel. I get it.
No, there's a dog over there just doing some. I don't think it's. No, he's just like doing something weird. He's gone now. Okay.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm sorry. I just got distracted.
No, that's all right. That's hilarious. That's hilarious. No, like who was the first band you ever tour managed that wasn't your own band, right?
Yeah, tour manager. So handling all the business and stuff just made it to where I knew how to do things, whatever it is. And so it was probably Lee Dorian from Rise Above Records. And it was Electric Wizard was the first band I tour managed professionally, if you want to call it that. 6 weeks in a van, still sleeping in the back of the van a few times, you know. So it was Electric Wizard. Before they were hugely popular, they needed someone to suss out because they didn't know anything about touring America, period. Nothing, like zero. So they needed someone that could get them around. So that's what I did. And then that went very well. And so then I did the next round that they did. And then Lee needed some more help with some of his other Rise Above Records bands. So I ended up doing Orange Goblin, ended up doing, who else was on the label at the time? Ended up doing In Solitude. And then I ended up getting a gig with St. Vitus, which I was always a fan of and had already known those guys. And they had their second wind come around to them where you couldn't get people, you couldn't pay anybody to go see them in the 90s, but here comes the late 2000s and they're playing in front of 1,000 to 2,000 people a night, co-headlining a Hellfest on one of their comeback gigs. So they needed somebody to handle their business for the next few years on the road. So that's what I did. And,
is this when Wino was working with them?
Correct. Wino came back to the band, and they did a couple of one or two tours. They started without me, and they had their band manager do those, but he didn't want to be a road manager, so he was still their band manager, but then he put me as the road manager for those guys, which I happily obliged and got a lot of really good touring experience from St. Vitus. We did some European tours, did an Australian run, did several runs here in the States. And it was a good experience working with those guys. I learned a lot on the Vitus tours. And then from there, I just kept doing other bands, man. I've done Lucifer. I've done with High on Fire. We did I did the Italian band Goblin, not the Claudio Simonetti Goblin, but the other
Right.
one. I did those guys a couple of times. Done Sun as Sun O, I guess
Yeah.
it is, you know.
Yeah.
And anyway, just in a bunch of bands. And right now, I don't handle that many bands. I do Candlemass exclusively, basically.
Yeah.
Handle North America for them, you know, so Canada, Mexico, North America. And I did a couple of shows with them last year in Brazil and Chile, which was really nice and cool.
Right.
So I work with Candlemass now, but yeah, that just came about with a friend, Lee Dorian from Cathedral,
Wow.
who owns
Yeah.
Rise Above Records. Just asked me if I could help him out and get his band sorted, and they would pay me, and so that's how it started, and that's how I got into it. And then I've never solicited myself as a tour manager. I probably should have. I could probably have bigger gigs, you know.
Yeah, but it's probably not your. It's not your. I mean, you'll do it because yeah, that
Right.
sounds cool. I'll do it, but it's probably not number one on your list to be known as a TM, you know?
Well, and I think that's it, man. Again, it goes back to me personally. I mean, I'm a connected dots kind of person. I want to connect people to music. That's my goal. Not necessarily through becoming a great guitar player or a great tour manager or a great whatever. It's to do a little bit of everything, it seems like. Or slinging records across a counter today, you know?
Yeah.
That's connecting people to music, you know?
Yeah.
So I think you're right, Jason. I mean, I don't, you know, touring can be rough, man, especially as you get a little older. And, you know, there's certain standards you want to meet after a certain number of years. And so, yeah, it's not, I didn't necessarily want to just stay out on the road and become a road dog. I mean, I don't romanticize that lifestyle the way a lot of people do. It's fine and it needs to be done. And I like touring, and it's been a lot of great experiences from that. But, you know, it's a certain kind of animal it takes to be a constant touring maniac like that.
Yeah. In all your years of tour managing bands, what's the biggest on the road challenge you've had to overcome, or problem you've had to solve, or spinal tap moment, or because I know you're kind of the babysitter out there, and if you've been doing this for a number of years with all these bands, there had to be a time when it's like, oh, geez, how am I going to get these guys through this?
Yeah, there was a time, and there's several times, and it's those times all have the same name though. Those times are called alcohol.
Okay.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. There's the challenge of the road.
Yeah, that's not
alcohol.
Yeah, alcohol is not the answer, kids.
Yeah. No, it's not. I've had to remind people. It's like, you remember when you first got into Sabbath and shit? You weren't fucking drinking back then.
Right.
And you still got a hard on from it. And you still got electric. It's why you're here today.
Yeah, that's right.
So I've had to remind, that's my speech sometimes. It's like, remember when you first heard this and you got a Woody for it, you weren't drinking.
Yeah. Right.
You weren't drinking for a few years yet. Okay.
And when there's a problem, you know, and you go, man, I need a drink. Or when there's another problem an hour later, I need another drink.
Yeah. Well,
not.
And I've had my share of alcohol, dude. Trust me. I've been a beer drinking. I used to think that heavy metal and beer basically they went one together. You know, they're one and the same. How could you not listen to metal and not drink beer? I mean, well, it's the manly thing to do. Drink beer and listen to metal, dude.
I mean, America was kind of built. There's some shoddy carpenter work being done with a 6-pack.
Yeah.
You know, because that's what they did, you know. I mean, hey, we're going to get some beers and build a house. Okay. You think that's a good idea?
I'll move into the one next door. So, I mean, I don't know, man. The biggest, there's all kinds of road stories, obviously, and there's been all kinds of challenges on the road. Just all kinds of stuff, dude. Just nightmares, you know, breakdowns and all kinds of stuff. But I guess if I just had to sum it up, you know, you deal with a lot of issues that really sometimes, you know, in all seriousness, come from the result of too much alcohol abuse. And nothing against alcohol or drinking even, but if you can't handle it and you just want to continuously create problems because of alcohol, well, that's an issue, and that needs to be resolved before you continue on. Really, I mean, it doesn't have to be anything, but you know,
right.
Were
you instrumental, switching gears a little bit, did you happen to be instrumental with Robert Lowe getting the Candlemass gig? Did you kind of help that expedite?
No, not really. It's kind of weird. I actually out of my fanboyness, I've actually known the Candlemass guys longer than I've known Robert. Like,
wow.
Yeah, I
Okay.
actually wrote to that band back in like, would have been 85 or so,
Sure.
or early
Yeah.
86.
Yeah.
And I ordered their demo tape, which was the only thing that was available at the time. And so I actually have been in contact with that band since 85. And then I did some interviews with them and just maintained contact, became friends. So I've known those guys longer than I've known Robert. And
Wow.
so when they were needing a singer, and we had just finished recording our last Solitude record, which was called Alone. We had just finished recording that at Nomad Studios up here. And apparently Candlemass was needing a singer, but they hadn't thought about asking Robert. But Robert's girlfriend at the time decided to submit his name to them. And
Oh,
so that's what she did. And then they did a little just tryouts, and Leif called me and said, dude, we're not trying to steal your singer. I'm like, are you kidding me, man? I mean, Solitude works maybe a month out of the year, you know. If anything, this will help our band, because I know
sure.
Candlemass is way more popular than we are. So now people are going to go, where's he come from? So that's the payout right there, you
I
know, that
think that
we
it did help you guys.
I got to think that it did. I
Yeah.
can't think that it didn't, you know.
Right.
So, because Candlemass was the one heavier, doomy type band that actually made some money doing all this back in the day. They actually were selling upwards of 100,000 plus records
Yeah.
in their time, whereas we weren't. We were selling 15, 20,000 maybe, you know. So those guys were way more popular. So anyway, he joined the band. He recorded the vocals for that King of the Gray Island remotely, did the vocals over here. And, you know, they used them for the next couple of years, you know.
Yeah, I remember.
I think there was a little bit of maybe some issues with the demon we just spoke about,
Okay.
and there's some just some
That was
problems.
a
So
non-related segue, by the way.
it
Just
was a non-related segue, but
non-related
talking
segue.
about that, you know, and I
Yeah.
love Robert, dude. I love my brother Robert, you know.
Yes.
But I think maybe there was some issues going on with that, and they
Okay.
and other things too, to where they just parted ways. But he got a few good records out of them, some great exposure,
Awesome.
some great experiences, you know, and have certainly helped our band, I think, a little bit. But
Look, I
yeah,
know you got to go. I have only one question for you, and it's kind of
yeah,
a fun question. And then Dave will finish
yeah,
up.
sure, man. I know we
So
got like 10
so I
minutes here.
really like the question, but it's not like rhetorical, or like I said, it's a fun question that I ask people sometimes who have a tenure with heavy metal or just music. So, which is heavier, fast or slow? What makes metal metal? Is it fast or slow? What is heavy about heavy metal? Is it fast
Yeah.
or slow?
Well, the answer is really easy for me. I mean, and it's subjective, and I think it's a matter of preference. So there's not really a set answer. But I'm saying, well, ultimately I'm saying it's both. But preference would be a little
If you
slower for
if you
me.
had to pick one,
Slow.
slow.
Yeah, John
Slow.
strikes me as a slow.
That makes it heavy.
I just
When you're on the ceiling, when you're on the ceiling, there's nowhere else to go.
That's right. But here's the thing, man. Fast and more of the, like, Jason, I know you are a rock and roll maniac, and so am I. But you're more than I am, because when it comes to preferences, well, I say this like I actually know this, just assuming I know this, but I know it's in your head, dude. Trust me. But it's just a personal preference. You know, I've always liked more kind of introspective, heady type of approach to music. Like I like the punch your gut rock and roll of AC/DC and Motorhead. And I love that. And I love the swagger of that. I love the punch your gut attitude of thrash metal and death metal, and just the forceful, aggressive nature of that. I really love that, man. I mean, I'm all in on that too, man. But if I had to be pushed on is, I like even more what I would call listening metal, like metal that you could just sit there and look like you're bored just listening to it, but you're not. You're kind of taking it in. That's just my preference. It's more of a, I hate using this word because it sounds so hoity-toity, but it's more of an intellectual approach to metal. I think metal can have both. Metal can be intellectual and smart and thinking man's type stuff, but it can also be war shit too. You know, you can go to battle with metal, or you can sit there and plot the battle as well, you know, or you can just sit there and reflect on the day's doings, you know. So metal's great. That's why I say it's both for me, really. I love fast and I love slow, but if you push me off a cliff, where we're about to, I'd say, God, keep it slow, man. Just keep it where I can manage it, brother.
Well,
Listening metal.
descriptions of metal have just gone completely. It's madness about how many names and monikers and boxes it's all been compartmentalized in.
And
it's terrible.
That's just a what's the word I'm trying to say? That's just something to use out of convenience to get your point across. So you say, hey, dude, have you checked out this new band called Witch Grinder? You're like, yeah, what do they sound like? Well, they sound like porno grind. Oh, okay, I know what that is, or they're like they're technical death metal. Oh, okay, so I get you. Or they're war metal, or they're glam metal. So you attach these little adverbs and adjectives to try to differentiate and try to hone it down. We all had to do that. But what I've found, dude, in the end, it's just, dude, it's either kick ass or not. It's heavy or not heavy. But I get it. You have to describe stuff a little bit more to get a bit more exact about what it is. When I tell people that we're like with my Liquid Sound company, I do a psychedelic rock band and say, yeah, we play like psychedelic rock. With like, oh, you mean like King Gizzard and the Izzard Wizards? I'm like, dude, like exactly the opposite of that. But people are calling that psychedelic. So no, we're more like pure, real psychedelic music, or we're more like space psychedelic, or whatever. You still got to use these terms. So I get it. You have to use these words to try to narrow down your focus about how it really sounds. But at this stage, man, I'm just tired of dealing with tags, man.
Well, what kind of music do you play? I play good music.
I play good music.
Good music.
Yeah. Good and gooder.
What kind of music do you like? Good.
Yeah, killer, good, kick-ass music.
Good music. Yeah,
John, I know we got to let you go, and I'm glad you brought up Liquid Sky Company because I wanted to get I wanted you to share some info on that. Can you give us the 60-second spiel on the status of Liquid Sky Company?
Sure, man. So Liquid Sound Company, but that's fine. Liquid Sound Company is it's just my obsession with psychedelic rock. I've been obsessed with that term. There we go, talking about terms psychedelic rock, but mind expanding rock like from the 60s. I grew up. It was Jimi Hendrix, watching Jimi Hendrix play at Moonray Pop, lighting his guitar on fire, playing this mad, crazy, psychotic versions of Wild Thing and stuff that made me want to play guitar and turn on to that kind of style of music. So freaky acid rock, like the weirder the better, crazier, more. So I was, really attached to that. And I still am. I love that type of music. There's great new bands, great old bands. And so my Liquid Sound Company thing was just me, just having a go at it, just for fun, just writing some music outside of my comfort zone. It's easy for me to come up with monolithic doom riffs and shit. Well, it's not that easy, but easier. It's harder for me to write like kind of, gentle, flowing, flower picking psychedelic rock, that with jangly 12-string shit. It's a challenge to do that and make it sound. I still sound kind of metal on some of that Liquid Sound shit. I can't shake it completely. So there's still some shit in there that sounds like Solitude, because I don't know. I'm writing all the songs, so it's just my fascination with psychedelic rock. The last album we did, I think, was our best thing we've ever done. We've done 4 records, but Psychoactive Songs for the Soul was the last Liquid Sound record. It's just totally different. There's some heavy shit in there, but I don't know. For people that like trippy music, I happen to love trippy music and psychedelic rock, and so that's all that is. It's just my passion for that and writing and recording music in that vein.
Yeah. Cool. I wanted you to share that with people because you gave me your psychoactive songs.
I gave you one. Great.
Yeah, cool. You gave me one, and I listened to it, and it's very much everything you just described.
Yeah, cool, man. I'm glad I gave you one. I didn't know. I tend to just give my shit away too. I'm a bad businessman.
Well, you're connecting people to music. It's what you do.
Yes, man. Well, great, dude. And I should mention I gotta do one plug, and it was just for. We asked about Solitude earlier. We took an old live album that we recorded in Poland, of all places, for a video that we did. Long story short, the mix was wrong when they released it. They fouled it up for some reason. They changed things that we had done. So anyway, we've reimagined that, and so we've got a thing called Hour of Despair out right now. And it's only on streaming, but it's a great way for people to listen to Solitude in the live environment from us for about 15 plus years ago. But Everybody go check that out. It's at solitude.com or hourofdespair.com. You can get it from all kinds of stuff, but everybody should go check that out. It's a nice live testament to what we were doing back in the 2000s, and it sounds freaking amazing, dude. My
Awesome.
guitar player, Steve Mosley, just kind of worked on it and got it back to sounding the way it should. So little plug for that. But that's about it with Solitude stuff, man. We might do some one or two maybe festival shows, but there's no plans necessarily to get back together as a band. It's just maybe do a couple more festival shows here and there, you know.
Yeah,
Have some more fun.
With your hair blowing in the wind, preferably.
Yeah, this time I won't be as specific. That way I'll be sure to hit the mark. Yeah, dude, that's cheesy, dude, but I swear to God that's true. And I was thinking about that. I go, should I tell anybody about that? Because
I'm glad you did.
I'm glad you did.
I saw it with my own eyes. I know.
Well, but it's kind of cheesy, dude. But it's kind of like a romanticized, idealistic, like little fantasy land. You're just sitting there. And you know, we all think about how we look on stage and how we perform because you want to look cool, dude. Let's face it. You want to look good or cool, and by cool I mean you just want to look like you're confident. You know what you're doing. You got it going on, and you want to look good, man. That's just natural, you know. So I swear to God, dude, it was that specific, and it kind of freaked me out that it happened exactly as I had dreamed it because I didn't really think that was going to happen. But just tiny little detail like hair blowing in the wind thing. Cool temperatures on stage, outdoor, in Texas, 3,000 plus people. Everything was as I had just dreamed it. And it came into reality. And I'm going to have to think about that more because I'm a big believer in making your own realities, you know. And there's ways to do that. You know, we don't have enough time to go into that here, but I'm wondering if that's that. You know, like I just
manifestation.
Seriously, man. I mean, because it really was down to minute details. And I thought about it the week after. I go, that's kind of weird, dude, because that happened exactly as I would have wanted it to, as I would have fantasy imagined it to. I just didn't think that's never going to happen.
Well,
like
it was like a Cinderella. This might be a bad metaphor, but it's Cinderella story, but the carriage didn't turn into a pumpkin. You had no curfew.
Yeah.
It was like, ta-da! Oh, I get to dance at the party, and all. This is gonna last forever. Yeah, it was kind of this perfect moment.
Yeah. So it's
I'm really glad that you shared that with us and didn't hold back. And you prefaced it correctly, cheesy or not, but you had this feeling. Yeah, that's important.
Yeah. Well, you know, Solitude is very important to me, dude, and I realized that we made an impact on a certain number of people, you know, and I'm grateful for that. And I thought if we're going to come back, I don't want to waste time putting everything together just to go do some gig at a local place where we're playing in front of 100 people or so. And it would have been cool too. You know, that's good too. But I thought if we come back and do any show, it needs to be bigger and better. And it was. And so I was very, very happy with the Hell's Heroes event. And thanks again to Christian for making that happen.
Oh my God. Yeah. I owe him.
What an effort. You know,
my God. Guy's an angel.
I'm trying to figure out how to take a pinch of his energy and yours, by the way, too, Jason. I just take a pinch of energy from you guys so that they can, you know, last me for a couple more years, man. I don't know how you guys do this sometimes.
Well, like John, I said earlier, I'm only as busy as what I have time for. I would have to move stuff out of the way to do some more preferable things, but that's okay.
Dude, before I go here, dude, I got to apologize in advance. I really wanted to see you with Armored Saint up here. You're playing up here in a few weeks, but I think you'll understand the reason that I'm not going to be there. It's 3 words. Well, maybe you will, but the 3 words are Uli John Roth.
Oh, he's playing the same night. Yeah.
Dude, he's playing like 5 minutes from my house here in Arlington.
Oh, you got to go to that.
Well, I'd already planned on going. I know this is kind of a sad thing, but I'm going with my friend that just lost his mother. And he asked me to go with him. I'm like, of course I'll go with you.
Of course.
But I'm going to have to miss, you know, like Jason playing, which I haven't seen you play with Dangerous in a long time. And then Armored Saint, which I just absolutely adore Armored Saint. But it's going to be one of those next time things for me.
Well, so when you're surrounded by all of these wonderful choices, you can only do one.
I guess, dude. And I'm going to check the one that's 5 minutes from my house.
Yeah.
My poor buddy. You know?
Hey, convenience is nice.
Dude, and it's at a tiny theater, you know, and so I'm going to be basically from me to you type of thing. You're looking, well, me to you, at least on the screen, watching Uli blow my brains out again for one last round, you know.
Love it. Wow. Thank you, John, for everything you do and you will continue to do and for talking to us here today.
Man, I
Yeah.
thank you guys, dude. I am I feel privileged. I really do, man, because I've watched several of y'all's episodes over the last several months, and naturally, I haven't watched all of them. That's almost impossible. You guys have so many, but I am in such a splendid company here. I feel grateful that I'm amongst the Max Normans and Kurt Vanderhoofs and all these guys you've got on your show. It's amazing. You guys have done great work.
Graham Bonnet.
Graham Bonnet, dude. I mean,
It's one of my favorite episodes. Graham
I
Bonnet.
haven't watched that one yet. I saw that on the
Jeff Scott Soto.
Dude, that's great. So it's so awesome. You guys get to talk to these dudes that are famously known people because they've done such good work for so many years, and it's cool. You guys are tapping into these guys. You guys have a platform. You guys have a name between yourselves, and so it's just awesome, dude. Thank you for allowing me to express my little Texas voice within this sea of huge names, as far as I'm concerned, man. But long live Texas metal, man. The spirit of it.
We feel the same way in every word you just said. I can't believe, we talked to Wolf Hoffman the other day, and I'm like,
I saw
you just talked to Wolf Hoffman.
Yeah.
Pretty weird.
But you also played with Wolf Hoffman, dude. I mean, let's not,
Yeah, that may have had a little feather in my cap to be able to just, call him up and go, dude, you want to be on my podcast?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Well, Jason has done me a favor. I would do him a favor as well. I'd speak on his podcast for him.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, John.
John, we're happy to add you to the roster, man. It's been great talking to you today. We'll let you get to work. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave, along with our special guest today, John Perez on the Talk Louder podcast.